Hello and welcome to part 6 of Ranking the Demons List, the series where I rank the Demons List. Pretty self-explanatory. The intros are basically the same at this point, so we'll just get right into it. However, as I usually say at the beginning of every episode, if you'd like to watch every other episode before this one, there will be a playlist with every episode in the description, and I would highly recommend that. Starting off the video, we have a very controversial pick right off the bat with Congregation. Congregation is controversial in much of the same way Lit Fuse is controversial, as this level starts off with a very simple, very atmospheric pre-drop, but due to its focus on being atmospheric, it is very boring. This queue part goes on for an eternity. It's basically the same throughout the entirety of it, and only when it gets to the drop does it get relatively interesting, and even then, I have a hot take. I think the decoration in the drop is kind of bland. I think that's my biggest problem with Congregation, is that it's as bland as it is, because I get the whole argument that it's just being done for atmosphere and artistic choice, but you can't tell me that they couldn't have just put some kind of decorative background or something, just something other than pure pitch black. That is about where my complaints with Congregation end, though, as this level is really good at setting up and maintaining a very intimidating, yet very claustrophobic atmosphere. I feel that out of any level on the list, Congregation is one of the better levels in regards to making you feel nervous, and as a cinematic piece, you know, something you'd watch on YouTube, this level is very, very intense and does a very good job at setting up atmosphere very well. What I really like about the level is, and mind you, I still feel like more could have been done with this, but that being said, I like how the level sort of evolves the longer you play it. It just feels like the decoration starts super simple, and the farther in you get, the more complicated things get, and I do like that kind of progression. As much as I do like this level, I do agree with a lot of people that the level is boring, and that there could have been a lot more done with the level, especially in the terms of background design. Because of that, I'm going to give the level a 7 out of 10. Next up we have Jesse Pinkman, and this level is very similar to Walter White, has the exact same criticisms, the exact same compliments. However, one thing this level has over Walter White is the blue block deco at the very end of the level. Yes, you got it right. You made a joke about the illicit substances that Walter White and Jesse Pinkman made. When I said that in my Walter White review, I didn't realize that Jesse Pinkman actually had it in the block deco, so you know what? This is good enough. This is what I was hoping for. We have blue magic at a GD level. Let's go. So yeah, this level's going to get the exact same score as Walter White. However, it would get placed above because it actually has blue magic. Alright, let's move on. Next up we have Asterios, and oh my god, I do not like this level. So normally if a level is just generic glow, I try to find a silver lining in it to complement, but this is the most generic glow I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how else to put it. There's this one part towards the very beginning where it has these really cool looking planets in this space background, but that's the only real part that stands out to me. The rest of it is just very, very generic glow, and yeah, this level is very boring. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. Moving on. Next up we have Terminux, and this is another one of those levels where I don't have a lot to say, however I do really like it. Terminux is basically what happens if you take the generic glow mid-early 2.1 style, get rid of all the bad that came from that, and only include the good. On top of that, just add a bunch of polish, and yeah, Terminux is a really, really cool level. Again, I don't know about the gameplay, I can never really truly speak on that, but the level does look pretty interesting gameplay-wise at the very least. But the decoration in this level did genuinely blow me away, especially for being in the sort of generic glow style. This level just looks really solid, and yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Next up we have Citra, and this level has amazing decoration. Now don't get me wrong, it's not the best thing I've ever seen. There's obviously a bunch of levels on the list that top it in regards to deco, however, it is still really solid. My only complaint about the level, realistically, is that the background deco tends to look pretty empty throughout most of the level, but aside of that, I think it still looks pretty solid. Of course, I also have to point out that this level is under 80k objects. In fact, it is really close to, but under it at 77k, showing that there was effort put into optimizing it. In my opinion, Citra's big downfall is the length of the level. The level is only 42 seconds long, which means it's probably enjoyable to play, but the only reason I think this is a downside is because the moment the level seems like it's hitting its climax, it just kind of ends. For reference, Citra is 42 seconds long, right? The Geometry Dash World level Space Pirates is 33 seconds long, meaning Citra is only 9 seconds longer than a Geometry Dash World level. I don't know, with the quality of the level, I can't help but just watch it and want more of it. Like, I just think the level's a little bit too short, and I think an extension would have really benefited. But aside of that, I still think the level's really, really solid. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Next up, we have No Jokes, and I have no idea how to even approach reviewing this level, and rather than just try to review it, I'm just gonna show you the level. This might be the funniest joke level I've ever seen. It gets a 10 out of 10. It doesn't f***ing matter how terrible the gameplay or deco is. This is genuinely funny. Next up we have Akira, and this is one of those levels in which I can tell it's really, really good. I can tell a lot of effort went into it, and I really like it visually, but it just feels so damn forgettable. Like, I had to watch the completion, like, 6 times just to remember anything. Like, I'm recording this seconds after watching a completion just so that it stays fresh in my mind. Like, I can't remember a single section from the level, and it's not because it's generic, boring, bad, it just doesn't stick with me. I don't know, it's probably just a me thing, but I'm not a big fan. However, I can definitely tell that effort went in, and for what it's worth, the music sync of the level is really, really good. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Next up we have Aronia, and this is one of the most inconsistent levels quality-wise I've ever seen. You'll have a part that looks completely empty like this one, and then you'll have a part that I honestly thought was made by Noble Boy. It's not, by the way. This is why you don't host a mega collab if you don't have any direction. If you're hosting a mega collab, you want to at least have some kind of theme. Even if that theme is as basic as purple. Like just a single color. It doesn't matter. You have to have some kind of direction, because if you just tell people, oh, just build whatever you want, make your part look good, you end up with levels just as inconsistent as this one. I'll give the level this. At its worst, the level does look generic and boring, however, it's not the worst I've ever seen. It might be subpar at best, but it could have been a lot worse, and so I'd say that this level does look all around pretty solid. It's just very incoherent, and it could have been a lot better. I'm gonna rank this level a 5 out of 10. The Art of the Blade is one of the worst levels I've ever seen. It is an absolute waste of space on the Geometry Dash servers. I hate this level so much, it should not be the way it is. Alright, look. I'll give the Art of the Blade this. The decoration is really, really solid. However, this level is a prime example of just because it looks good doesn't mean it's fun to play, because the gameplay is where the problems are. This is probably the first time on the list where I can truly talk about the gameplay, because the skill doesn't matter. The flaw with the level's gameplay is just simply how it functions. In fairness, the raw gameplay in and of itself is fine. I don't have an issue with it. What I do have an issue with is what you have to do while you are playing the level. And rather than just sit here and try to criticize it, I'll explain it verbatim, because explaining it puts the point across way better than criticizing it. So in the level, there are 3 visual indicators that pulse different colors that you need to remember in the level. The first one is this giant pillar in the robot part. Not too hard. The next is, and I'm not joking, this singular pixel on the top of the screen in this part. And then finally, it's not this whole board of arrows. Believe it or not, all of these arrows are irrelevant and don't matter. It is just this one very specific arrow on the bottom left. Each of the 3 objects will pulse between one of 3 colors, and that color is completely random. There are 3 colors that it can pulse between, and each one represents a numerical value. And keep in mind, this is random, so you need to be watching for this every single attempt while you're playing, which is great when one of the objects is a pixel in which 2 of the colors it can flash are gray on black and black on black. And then finally we get to the black orbs. Each of these rows of 3 black orbs, each orb represents a different number. So the top one would represent one number, the middle is another, and then the bottom is another. This is static, this does not change. The problem is you can't see any of this. You need to remember what each black orb represents on each of these rows, and the order is different for every single row. So you could have 90 on the top on one row, but then it's 90 in the middle on the next row. So you remember how I said that each pulse represented a different numeric value? That value, you need to use that to get through each row of the black orbs, remembering not only the numbers that you got from the pulsing, but also what number each of these black orbs represents. Alright, so you understand all that information and you take it in? Good, because now you need to do this for an entire section of just going through these black orbs, hoping that you don't mess up a single row. If you get any of this memory wrong whatsoever, a spike wall will appear at the end of the level and kill you. So after listening to all that, you might notice a problem here. This is way too much for a human being to figure out in just the span of a 1.5-minute long Geometresh level. And you'd be right. It's because of this that when basically any victor ever gets to the board of arrows, they pause and look at their attempt as it's happening. Now bear in mind, even if you pause to make the level easier, you still need to remember not only your numbers, but on top of that, the order of the numbers in the black orbs, and on top of that, you still need to remember what number each color represents in the first place. This is the worst thing I have ever seen in this game. I'm sorry, but designing your level around forcing the player to pause is the dumbest thing ever. I'm not going to be one of those people that's like, pausing during runs is cheating, because no, I think it's a legitimate strategy. If the game allows you to pause, you're allowed to pause. But forcing the player to do that is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And even when you strip away all the problems, it's not that creative of a memory part. The only thing creative about it, maybe, is how the RNG works. But aside of that, what you have is just an overcomplicated, randomized, messy version of the key part from a bizarre phantasm. It sucks. I feel like I've gotten really angry this review, and so I'm gonna dial it back. Obviously, I feel very strongly towards this level. I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Oh man, this level has me f***ing heated. Really quick, I do want to talk about something before I continue with the list of demons. In the last episode, I was pretty hard on the level Launchpad Labyrinth, and Moth commented on the video seeming genuinely kind of upset about how negative I was, and in fairness, I was pretty hard on the level. Now, I'm not saying any of this because, oh, I don't want to upset Moth or anything like that. It's more so I want to set the stage going forward for how I feel about criticism. See, when you're criticizing something, especially if it's negative criticism, it tends to sound very harsh, but I want to make it very, very clear, no matter how hard I am on a level, it does not mean I hate the creators or I hate everything they've made. Using Moth as an example, I may not like Launchpad Labyrinth, and I may have been really hard on it, but that doesn't mean I hate all of Moth's levels. Red Rum is a genuinely really interesting and just cool-looking, edgier Geometresh level, and then you get levels like Upside Dizzy, which have some really creative uses of gravity effects. What I'm getting at here is, just because I dislike one level does not mean I hate every single level that that creator makes. It doesn't matter how bad that one single level is. The reason I'm going on this tangent now is because I was just pretty hard on the Edge of the Blade, but I want to clarify that I love a lot of the creations a lot of the people who worked on this level have made. One of the people who worked on the level is Zorawa, and Zorawa is probably my favorite creator, at least one of them. Zorawa has made some really cool levels like Hue Effect and Count to 20, and there's more from there, but those are just a couple examples. Just keep in mind that these are criticisms of individual levels. They are not attacks on a person's character. And with that out of the way, let's get to the final level. So next up we have Gracefully, and right off the bat, I have biased against liking this level. Not because anything in the level is bad, but because of the song. It uses the same song as Melody by Sweet Dude. Beyond the fact that the song makes me think of Melody by Sweet Dude, it uses the Living Tombstone's old robot voice filter, which is something I don't know if he still uses, but I hope not because I really hate this filter. This song annoys the crap out of me me to the point where it would have actually probably lowered the score by 2. And because of that, I'm raising the score by 2, because I feel like that's very unfair to the level. So Gracefully is kinda like a modern/design level thing. It's really hard to describe, but it's mainly a modern level, and while it does suffer from modern level, and by that I mean it has custom jump rings, if you ignore that fact, this level's actually pretty cool. Not only does the gameplay flow in a really interesting way, but the decoration is genuinely breathtaking. Some of the art in this level is just really, really cool. One of my biggest complaints is that I really hate that the special thanks text appears at the end of the level, but like during the gameplay and not on the end screen, because I find that extremely distracting. Other than that, this is a really solid level. I'm gonna rank it a 7 out of 10. And the only reason the score is as low as it is mainly just that in a lot of places the background looks really plain and empty. But overlooking that, it's a really solid level. And with that, we have finished our first 10 levels. However, we have quite a few bonus levels to get into this episode, as a lot of things were placed above. And so let's get right into those. Directions is really cool. The level starts off looking really basic, with this very intricate and cool yet very simple looking block design and a background that just screams detail. It looks very plain and simple, but it's also kind of intricate and cool at the same time. Kinda hard to describe. You get this forest background with these telephone lines. It kinda reminds me of the old Sunset levels. It's really neat, and I really like the look of it. It doesn't really change up until 46% though, and the whole time you're sitting there thinking, I wonder if the level's going to change anything up, because it starts to feel boring, but right when it starts to feel boring at 46%, it completely switches up style and becomes an extremely chaotic level. I'm not even going to try to describe the level after 46. It just looks really chaotic and really interesting. It's almost like a sandstorm, but with different colors flashing in the background. Overall, I really like the way this level sets things up, and I think it's really neat. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Next up, we have Critical Heat. This is a level that I really, really wanted to like, but unfortunately it just ended up being really disappointing. And I think that sucks too, because the idea of a gasoline-themed level is just really neat to me. The block deco, well, obviously looking fleshed out and does look like it had some effort put into it, does just end up kind of looking plain. The fire in the background is obnoxious and realistically just very distracting. There are these white pulses that just kind of hurt my eyes, and on top of that, there's just a general level of polish missing from this level. The level abuses the scale hack in a way that's really obnoxious. I don't normally mind levels using scale hack to make things look better, because honestly it can be done really well. But in this specific case, they just scaled up the fire object a ton and then spammed it everywhere. It just doesn't look good. I mean, really, all I need to tell you is that this screenshot is from this level, and you get it. This is ugly. This level just does not look good. I'm sorry. In general, I find Critical Heat to be really disappointing and just lacking in every sense of the word, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. Before we get into the next level, I want to give a flashing light and eye strain warning. As I was editing this, I kind of realized how bad the flashing lights actually are, so yeah. If you have problems looking at flashing lights or problems with eye strain, I highly recommend looking away for this next review. Neutra is a level that I really like. The flashing lights mixed with the complexity of the gameplay manages to work with the song in a way that I find really, really satisfying. The level is just breathing with life in a way that makes it very entertaining to watch. Unfortunately, I can't go much deeper than that in this review, because a lot of what makes Neutra good is how well it uses the song, and due to copyright, I can't play the song, therefore I can't show you what makes this level good. What I'm gonna recommend is to just go and find a full detail showcase of Neutra and watch it, and you'll understand why I find this level so good. For now though, I'm just gonna give the level a 10 out of 10 and leave it at that. And finally, we have Unknown. Unknown is one of those edgy gray and black levels, kind of like what Descent into Exile was trying to do, except this level does it extremely well. The level's decoration looks really good, and it'll do things like have the block decoration suddenly turn into sketches of the block decoration for a couple seconds, which is a really neat effect. And one of my favorite things is how well certain things are animated in the level. Things like the blinking clubstep monster are just really, really smooth, and it helps this level stand out from other levels like it. This level's pretty basic, and normally this would end up being a complaint. However, in this level's case specifically, it's very short, and so it doesn't overstay its welcome, making it very, very memorable. Overall, I really, really like Unknown, and so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. And with that, we have finished Ranking the Demons List Part 6. So, funny thing about this episode, if you've seen the update video that I uploaded before this, I lost a lot of stuff, and I lost a bit of audio for this this video, and the reason that's so funny is because this is actually the second time I'm recording this outro. At the very least, this time around, the levels were very entertaining to review. Mind you, there were still some boring ones here and there, but after my last episode, the list shifted around pretty dramatically, and because of that, there's actually some entertaining levels mixed in with the boring ones. So even though I had to re-record some things, and this episode was kind of in creation hell for a little bit, it did end up being really enjoyable to make. Due to the whole, losing data thing, I just want to apologize in case the editing in this wasn't as good as the other parts. Know that this will not happen often, and honestly, it'll probably be fine, but for the most part, I just want to kind of state that, if the editing sucks, that's why. As always, and as I said at the beginning, there will be a playlist in the description with every other part in the series. I highly recommend, if you haven't yet, to go watch the rest of that and to catch up on the series. And overall, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching.